Welcome back to Total Disclosure, everyone. I'm Tom Thompson, and this is a Total News Update. Before we begin, make sure you like this video, share with your friends and family on social media, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay up to date with our new content. Keeping this content free isn't easy, but you can help by joining our membership and supporting the live show here on YouTube or on Spotify for as low as $2.99 a month. You can have access to bonus content, early podcast availability, and even a yearly gift autographed by our team. We really appreciate your support and we work hard to bring you, the viewer, along this ride with us. We love you and we appreciate everything that you do for us. Our show does not exist without you. On Wednesday, July 26, 2023, three ex military officials appeared before a congressional committee to share astonishing revelations. During the hearing on UFOs held by a House Oversight Subcommittee, they asserted that the government possesses far more knowledge about these unidentified flying objects than it has disclosed to the public. The testimony given by Ryan Graves, David Grusch, and David Fravor about unexplained object sightings and the government's possession of non human biological matter left the committee and the public in a state of awe. Their accounts are likely to be remembered as historic and groundbreaking, forever marking their names in UFO history and the history of this planet. The revelation of extraterrestrial life visiting Earth would mark an unprecedented and momentous event in our species' history. It has the power to break down the limits of our understanding, revolutionize scientific paradigms, and fundamentally change and challenge everything that we know about our own existence. Above all, the discovery would compel us to confront our place in the vast cosmos. For centuries, we have considered ourselves the sole intelligent life form in the immense expanse of space. The presence of extraterrestrial beings or non human intelligence would serve as a humbling reminder that we are just one species among a myriad of others, all intricately linked by the cosmic web of evolution. This cosmic encounter would act as a mirror reflecting both our potential and flaws as a species. It would urge us to reevaluate our priorities and recognize the urgent need for global cooperation. The knowledge that we are not alone demands a united response to address the challenges facing humanity, transcending national boundaries and ideological divisions. Moreover, the advanced technology and knowledge possessed by these civilizations and potentially the secret keepers hiding information regarding technologies that have been discovered, crashed here on Earth, could propel our scientific and technological progress forward by leaps and bounds, potentially saving lives, changing conditions that people are living in, and making life overall much, much safer, much healthier for so many human beings. The implications for fields such as medicine, energy, communication, and space exploration would be unimaginable. Our current understanding of the laws of physics and the limits of possibility would be pushed to new frontiers. Simultaneously, the presence of non human intelligence might trigger fear and uncertainty in certain segments of society, given our historical predisposition towards fear and prejudice of the unknown. It would be essential to navigate these challenges with wisdom, empathy, and an open mind, ensuring that we approach this encounter with respect and understanding. On a philosophical level, the existence of life On a philosophical level, the existence of life outside of Earth would raise profound questions about consciousness, intelligence, and the very purpose of life itself, and where we go from here. We might ponder whether we are part of a grand cosmic tapestry, with each civilization contributing its unique thread to the fabric of the universe. What fundamental truths about existence would we glean from these otherworldly beings? That remains to be seen. The implications of discovering extraterrestrial, non human life in this universe. But not only that, but the idea that it's visiting this planet could unify humanity under a shared cosmic identity and potentially open pathways for interstellar diplomacy, trade, and collaboration. The exchange of ideas and cultures with beings from distant star systems and potentially other parallel universes and dimensions could usher in an unparalleled era of growth and enlightenment. Personally, I believe that disclosure is a process. I believe that it's happening and unfolding before our eyes as we speak. And I don't think that there is anything that can stop it at this point. The truth is out there, and we are very, very close to finding it. For further reactions regarding the historic hearings that occurred on the 26th of July, 2023, I sat down with my friend Digby for his personal insight and take on the events of that day. Welcome to Total Disclosure, everyone. I'm Tom Thompson, and this is a total news update. Sixth, the most historic hearings in the history of ufology took place in Washington, D.C. And we were all there covering it live, but obviously there's so much to talk about now that we've had some time to digest it. I'm joined by my good friend here, Digby Forno. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, mate. How you doing?
It's another day in paradise over here. Super happy to be off of work today and obviously here with you. I just wanted to get your initial reactions, first impressions on what you saw, what you heard. Obviously, you joined us live when we were covering it, but what's run through your mind since then? I'm really curious to hear now that there's been some time since it's happened. You've been able to kind of intake everything. How are you
Yeah,
feeling at this
absolutely.
point?
Yeah, no, absolutely fantastic. I think it was as much as anybody could have really hoped for. I mean, I know that there are some people out there that perhaps think that we should have received more, but that was never going to happen. You know, we need to ease into this subject slowly with taking into consideration the rest of the population that perhaps don't know as much about this subject as we do. So I feel like it was a good start. It was a good start to the disclosure process, and I thought some of the statements were absolutely fantastic, especially when you're considering the fact that these were said under oath. And I think that's the important thing that we need to remember here.
I absolutely agree with you. There was a lot of incredible information that was entered into the record officially that day. Now, since then, we've obviously seen some back and forth going on between Mr. David Grusch and the head of Arrow, Sean Kirkpatrick. I'm curious as to what you've been thinking about how that's all played out.
The Kirkpatrick thing's a funny one because I'm really surprised that he's said what he has said. I mean, if you look at the letter that he wrote and the claims that he made, I think it was ill-advised. I don't think he should have gone on the record saying the things that he has said, and I think it's going to come back and bite him, quite frankly. And I think it just discredits Arrow completely. And I think actually for a lot of us now, we're actually looking at Kirkpatrick and thinking that it's just a bit of a joke. From my point of view, they seem like disinformation agents rather than people out there trying to find the truth.
I have to agree. There's a lot of people that have been coming to his defense saying things like, hey, if this was my boss, I would want him to defend his coworkers. And I understand that particular perspective because he was kind of making some blanket statements to protect some people around him, which I do respect. I completely understand that. But when it comes to the claims made by Mr. Grush, I feel that this may be, like you said, something that later on down the line comes back and haunts him. Now, obviously, we're now in a situation where David Grush needs to be put in a situation where he can divulge highly classified information in a skiff. But we're also dealing with a situation where allegedly, ever since he made contact, I believe, with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, he no longer holds the clearance that is required to communicate those things in a skiff. Do you have any information regarding that matter?
I don't know, and I'm going to air away from the US politics side of it because it isn't my strong point. But what I will say is that it is my understanding, my limited understanding, however, that once you hold that security, you permanently hold that security for the information that you're aware of. So he's always going to need to have authorization to speak about the things that he needs to speak about, and the people that speak to him also need to get that level of clearance. I don't think that this is going to hinder us. He still has the information. He is still going to be in the situation is able to speak about it. The only thing that we're going to find frustrating is that us as the general public may not get the opportunity to listen to or hear the information that he's had, because we're still dealing with classified information. So I think the best that we can get is knowing that the lawmakers there on Capitol Hill in the US get the necessary information that they need so that they can make the best decisions for the public, if we can trust them to do that. But based on what I've seen so far with the guys who are at the hearing on Wednesday, I remain optimistic, let's say.
I agree with you. I am optimistic as well. And I think the most important question that I could ask you, because it really involves us and the rest of the population and those that are in this community that follow this subject very closely. What do you think we can do moving forward to keep the ball rolling as researchers, as followers of the topic? What are some things that the population, even regular citizens, should be doing over the next maybe 2 to 3 years to keep the momentum going in our direction and to prevent a situation where this gets buried under the rug again and then all of a sudden the news cycle just kind of stops?
I think we've got such a community when it comes down to places like UFO Twitter. You know, there's an awful lot of people on there, and it is a strong community, but it's a strong community that needs to start working together. And lose some of the infighting and the bickering, because we are much stronger together than we are apart. And we need to remember that. We also need to remember that there's a lot of people coming to this subject that have never touched on this before and never broached this before. And we need to do a bit of hand holding right now. And there are people that are maybe scared, confused, don't know what to believe. We need to get to a situation where we're able to help these people and inform these people and steer them in the right direction. Information, and not the silly lens flare videos that people are claiming are orbs and all this sort of stuff, because 95% of the stuff out there is rubbish, and we don't want to be peddling that stuff to people. Now is the time to show people that we're serious and that there is evidence here, and that there is a story here, and that's what we need to do. We need to guide these people, and I'm a firm believer of that. And we need to come together right now.
I couldn't have said it better myself. As someone who's very involved in UFO Twitter, obviously myself, you, Ty, Astral, Shane Frakes, there's a lot of good people that we've made connections with. I'm always preaching that, right? There's always an opportunity for us to find common ground. And I think right now it's crucial and it's critical that we do so. And I'm curious, I know you're not from the United States. What was it like for
What gave it away?
you? Right. A little bird told me, right?
Yeah.
What was it like? What was it like for you, knowing how divisive U.S. politics have been, to see both Democrats and Republicans working together? Did that send a message to you that they were taking this very seriously?
Well, let me tell you, I've done a very quick crash course in US politics over the last couple of weeks, so I've managed to brush myself up to speed a little bit. But nation aside, whether it was the US or the UK, when you have a political system with separate parties that are often vying for the same attention or the same space, you always get the same arguments, you always get the same fights. So any situation where two separate parties can come together and agree on something is a momentous occasion. And we are incredibly lucky that this ended up being a bipartisan effort, and that it's got the attention that it has. Interestingly, I thought at the time that there wasn't a lot of media coverage around the world for it on the actual day. But actually, I would say that since then, the media coverage has started to ramp up. It's almost like they've had time to sit on the information that they've had, review it, and go, actually, there is something in this. And that's been great to see. My worry is the next month. You know, you've got Congress on a break for the next month. You said 2 or 3 years. I think let's just take it 1 month at a time. We've got a break now, when nothing else is going to happen in Congress. We need to keep the momentum going. We need to look to people like yourselves and News Nation, who are doing an absolutely fantastic job of not dropping that ball. And we just need to keep that momentum going. We need to keep the story out there. We need to make sure that we're heard so that the momentum is still there when Congress come back after their summer break.
Do you believe that we've now hit a point where it's too late for this to go backwards? And when I say that, I mean there is no chance or very little chance that they can put the genie back in the bottle. Have we finally come over the peak and finally reached a point where disclosure is now essentially unstoppable?
Yeah, I mean, it's my personal belief that by the end of the year, at least 75% of the population will truly believe in the next extraterrestrial presence on Earth. I really believe that. I think that if you see what's happened only in the last couple of months, and that momentum is just snowballing, that's why I think the next month is so important. There's a lot going on behind the scenes right now. The White House has been incredibly quiet, and I think they're getting their ducks in a row right as we speak. So I would say that there is going to be big news. I've heard whispers as well that there is some incredibly big news coming out, and that there may perhaps be a press embargo in place at the moment, but I don't know any more information other than that. So it would be interesting to see what comes of that.
I've seen press embargoes involved in the release of films like Star Wars and big media events like that,
Mhm.
but when I hear that for something of this nature, I can't help but tell everyone watching this video right now just how damn exciting it is for me to hear you say those words.
Well, last time I heard about a press embargo was 2 days before the David Grusch story came out. So
Right, that's exactly right. That's a great point. So for you personally, Digby, as this goes on, have you had to have any conversations with anybody in your personal life that's maybe not so convinced, or do you have anybody around you that thinks the way you do about this topic? What have those conversations been like?
luckily, my wife is very much on side with the way that I think, so I don't really have a problem there. My mother is exactly the same, although she pretty much just goes along with what I say. I think half the time to shut me up. But my that's a different one. They think I'm crazy. But I'm just doing this to prove myself right at this point. I don't really care about anything else. That's not true. But no, it is difficult, and I think everybody feels this, and UFO Twitter is a safe space to post stuff, and dare you post anything on your actual Facebook page to do with the subject. But I think more people have been doing that recently than they have done in the past. What's interesting is the lack of reaction you get from everybody, but it doesn't mean that we should stop, and we should. As I said earlier, it's about putting ourselves in a position where we are ready to help people when they come to us. We can't force people to have our beliefs, and neither should we. But when they are presented with the necessary information and evidence that they need to believe, we need to be there to help them. And that's what we need to be concentrating on right now.
I totally agree with you. One last question for you, Digby. With this entire disclosure situation, all of it encompassed, is there anything that has surprised you in this process? Has there been anything that you've come across that you really didn't see coming or you weren't expecting?
Not necessarily, not so much at the moment. One thing I was surprised with specifically with the hearing this week was the lack of cross-examining of the witnesses. Pretty much everybody there, with the exception of a Mrs. Fox, who went off talking about Chinese spy balloons, everybody seemed completely and utterly on the same side and incredibly supportive of the witnesses. And I just thought that that was an absolute breath of fresh air, and just fantastic to see, because I really did think that there were going to be more people cross-examining them, going and trying to tear them apart. It just really wasn't the case, which says to me that all those people in that room had seen some information behind the scenes, and by the time they got to actually being in the room with Commander Fravor and David Grusch and everybody else, they had already made their mind up. They already knew. They had already realised. And I think was very evident in the fact that there was a complete lack of cross-examining, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that, and I also feel that moving forward, that and again, I don't mean this to even sound like I'm patting myself on the back or speaking for anybody, but it really feels like on this particular subject that you, myself, Ty, and others, we've become sort of the new media. Now, I know News Nation is doing what they're doing, but moving forward, it feels like we are now in a position to inform. We're now in a position to potentially guide some people who might have a difficult time digesting some of this information. So, with that being said, Digby, I want to thank you for being here, my gain further insight and to get a unique reaction to the hearings on the 26th. Our Tyler Roberts sat down with Mick West for a unique perspective on the event.
Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate that. I'm here today with Mick West, known skeptic in the UFO community, and also just a brilliant guy when it comes to explaining what we're seeing in our skies when it's more of a prosaic mindset and kind of dig into these things. So I think he's a great voice to have in the community, and we're going to bring him in here now and get his view on the UAP hearings. It's been an overwhelmingly positive spin in the narrative to what we normally see in UFO hearings. So I'm very interested to get his take. Mr. Mick West, how are we doing today?
Very good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, how could we do a news style show about UFO hearings and not have you or someone like you in here to kind of keep us in check? Right now, I am a huge, you and I often don't agree, but we're civil enough where we can have a conversation. And I think that is what the UFO community lacks. I'm glad to see that you were featured on News Nation, on these other news shows, as the counterweight, the balance, if you will. So I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on the hearing specifically, but the testimony.
I was fascinated to watch the proceedings. I was somewhat disappointed, and I think expectations were lowered as we kind of got into it. Originally, it seemed like there were going to be several witnesses, and then it kind of got narrowed down.
Yeah.
And then we found out that two of the witnesses are going to be people that we heard from before, Ryan Graves and David Fravor. Of course, the star witness was Dave Grusch, the UFO crash retrieval program whistleblower, and he was the one that we had the most interest in. But unfortunately, he seems like he's very constrained from what he's able to talk about. So he wasn't really able to give us any new information that I really could see other than slight variations on what he's already said. And in some ways, he actually said a bit less than he said in the News Nation interview, probably because he was more constrained for time. But yeah, the questions, there were very interesting questions, like where are these craft, and can you name names? But the interesting questions, he always just deferred to the answer of I can't talk about that in an open setting.
Yeah.
And this went on, like, he did that several times, like 7 or 8 times or so. That was kind of disappointing.
I will agree that was disappointing, but do you agree that it does make sense that he would have to be very, he's obviously been given the go to talk about a certain portion of what he knows or what he is alleging. There's obviously that other side, right? The classified side. And did it not show you that at least he is doing this by the book, by the way it's supposed to be done? Quote unquote.
Sure, it would seem that way, but it's kind of very puzzling. The things that he's allowed to say and the things he's not allowed to say.
I actually agree with you there. I really do. I do.
Yeah, and that kind of leads to the the possibility that the things he's allowed to say are perhaps not as based in reality as some of the other things. Like he talks about, one of the cases that he was allowed to talk about is this Italian case,
the 1933
yeah,
case, yes,
in Magenta, Italy, which is probably just a hoax, like a hoax that was like kind of formulated by some Italian guy some years ago, not that long ago. But it's, he's probably allowed to talk about that because it's not actually a real thing. Probably the Americans didn't actually recover this, and it's just a story that he's repeating. And the broader claims that he's making, that there is this program. Why isn't the existence of this program classified? Why is he able to talk about it? Why is he able to say things like, we have recovered crash flying saucers? Surely that would be classified, and surely he wouldn't be able to talk about it. So it's kind of bizarre that he can say things like, we have crash flying saucers, but I can't tell you where they are. Why is one thing classified but the other isn't?
Right. Again, I see your point. No, I fundamentally disagree. I do think that they saw something that day, but that remains.
Me too. I think they saw something, but I don't think it's necessarily a large flying craft that moved supersonically.
Okay, and see, there we go. We can agree to disagree on that until hopefully one day we get the truth. I think there's more data, and I think I think we can agree that more transparency between government and the public, it's needed. At a time when there are so many questions being posed by so many people, I think it's time that we end the facade, try to get to the actual truth of this. And I'm glad that we're having hearings, and I'm glad they're ramping up, and I'm glad that people like you exist, because this is a very serious topic. I mean, we're talking about beings that are non-human with advanced technology, right? Potentially. Either it's something else, or it's all misrepresentation, a potentially disinformation campaign run to keep other things secret. I think everything is still 100% plausible. We don't have all the data, don't have all the facts. I think the government is holding out information that they do have. And I would like to see more answers and less questions.
I'm very much in favor of more openness, and I largely agreed with what Ryan Graves was saying in the hearing when he was calling for more transparency, less classification of things, and setting up better structures for pilots to report things, and removing the stigma and the potential repercussions of pilots reporting things. Because I think that's all good. The more information we have, the better. But
absolutely,
I don't think that. What you were saying there, that it's either one thing or another, I think perhaps the end result is going to be a large combination of things, probably not including aliens, but maybe a little bit. But I think probably what we're going to see is some of those things you mentioned, like disinformation campaigns we know existed in the past. Like
absolutely.
The U2 and the SR-71, they were kind of covered up somewhat by passing off the reports as being UFOs, and using the ridicule of UFOs so that people didn't talk about it, or even. It's interesting, the stealth bomber, the design of the stealth bomber, is actually severely limited in what it could be, because we don't have the technology back then, because we had to calculate the radar signature of it to make it the shape it is. And the computers back then weren't capable of handling curved surfaces. So everything had to be made up out of flat surfaces. So you get these versions of these stealth fighters back then, which had these incredibly angular things. Especially the I think it's the F-115. That's all these flat surfaces. But now the newer ones have all the curved surfaces. So I think like the curved surface is more kind of indicative of advanced technology than this angular surface.
So Mick, we'll see you next time, and we wish you and your family very well.
Thank you.